Hello and welcome to the Hypertrophy Odyssey chapter
469.
It is the fourth day of the week, aka the Buster Cannon workout. I'm feeling very good right now, very excited for this workout. But anyway, to the main subject matter for today. Charisma is a very important stat. So the main reason why I want to discuss this is because I've been watching Fish Tank. By the time this episode airs, it will have finished and I will know who the winner and maybe talk about it a little bit more. But in that show, or should I say live stream, there is one particular person who is he's in the top 3 already. His name is Bashir. He is a Muslim ginger man who's very eclectic, is the best way to describe him. But the thing is, I think is very interesting, is that he lacks charisma. And his lack of charisma has gotten him in trouble non-fucking stop during this entire season, and it's caused him to get into a lot of frictional areas, and it made me think, wow, charisma is an important thing. Way more than people want to admit. So I think that in today's episode, we're going to be looking at that, his particular example, maybe a few other things like that, but also as well, like the microcosm that he shows in a certain sense of the bigger expansion of what charisma is like and how without it, you're fucked, really. You know, that's really how it is. So with that being said, though, we're going to talk about a lot of that and just the charisma stat in general and how maybe you can do things to make it better. Maybe, but maybe you can't. Maybe you're just fucked. It all just depends. But it really is something that you could work at. But we'll talk more about that and a few other things when we get to the race.
Alright, so started this day off with the leg extensions, which are pretty good. But anyways, back to the main subject matter for today. Charisma is an important stat. So the main reason why I wanted to discuss this is because as I was watching Fish Tank, which is a great show, a live stream I should say, one of the main characters who unfortunately got third place was Bashir. He was a Muslim ginger. He was a very enigmatic person, but the thing is, he lacked a charisma. The charisma that he lacked was a detriment to him in the grand scheme of the game, as people took his word as not meaningful because he lacked the skills in order to have charisma. Now, of course, we as the audience understood that there were things there that are behind the scenes, like he would actually talk to the camera. Obviously, we were seeing things that other people weren't seeing because that's what we were privy to. But at the same time, you could see that the vacuum of charisma that he brought to the house in certain situations was a detriment to him. He was in quote unquote sometimes the vibe killer, and that could really cause you to just get screwed over in life. This isn't necessarily his fault even necessarily, because in certain scenarios, in more regular scenarios, of course, this might have not really been a real effect, because this could have just been a happenstance type of thing. Because realistically, when you have a controlled environment like that, where you are isolated from the outside world and there aren't things that you can default to allow your charisma to shine, let's say music or some things like that, you are kind of shuttled into a place where you're kind of fucked over if you don't have it naturally. And I think that that's the interesting part of charisma, is that charisma in and of itself is a stat that naturally has to happen at a certain level. Now, there are people that are very highly charismatic from the outset, that have that stat so high that they can naturally develop it and make it something even better than they already have, or those people who have enough to get by but not necessarily enough to sway a shit ton of people. And I think that most people on social media who do well generally are people that can turn on the charisma charm on to many different people. And I think that is what makes a successful social media person in general, because I think that they are able to translate that charm out. Now, of course, there are people who can fake it. That is something that is very abundant, especially with the power of editing and reshoots and all this other stuff that people will end up doing. They can fake the charisma, and then thus they are completely different when people meet them. And that is what we see a lot in movies as well. A lot of people end up faking the charisma. That's why actors are actors, really. They don't really exist in the plane that they are. They are nothing but vessels for something else, of course, the visions of the writers. But the idea that charisma is so important is because charisma in and of itself is so vastly outweighed if you get to a point where it could literally get you in so many doors without even having to try. You don't have to necessarily work for things as much as a regular person would, or somebody that has even, let's say, less or no charisma than they would have to work, as sometimes the words that people who are charismatic carry out to others are weighed so much more that they will just allow them to do much more with them. And it's pretty insane. it's a very underdeveloped slash underspoken about stat in all of society, because I think that people who lack it generally have to do other things in order to allow people to listen to them. And I think that there isn't a natural way to really develop it per se. But I do believe being forced into certain social interactions and just practicing talking generally, I think does do some wonders in making it so you are more charismatic. But of course, also understanding yourself also helps, because it doesn't matter if you're charismatic but don't believe any of it, because then the other person's not going to believe you, and then thus you're kind of screwing yourself. But also knowing what you're good at when it comes to charisma, and knowing that maybe that isn't your strong suit, is where people should lie and figure out what is their strong suit. But you should put some aspect into the charisma, because it really can change how the perceptions of other parts of your life, how you interact with others, changes. So it is important.
And we're back. Welcome to the workout debriefing. Exercises not filmed, none. Exercises skipped, also none. Got everything in, thankfully. But anyways, back to the main subject matter for today. Charisma, very important stat. The main reason why I want to discuss this is because there is a perfect shining example in a live stream that shows the idea of what it's like to be non-charismatic and trying to be on a show where charisma is part of the battle. It's not all the battle, but it is part of the battle. And I think that when you're trying to do something, specifically when you're talking to others, trying to get past the hurdle of charisma is such a fucking headache, because you could be doing everything correctly. And technically, in this case, he was doing everything by his books, by what he said. He was a man of his word. But because of his lack of charisma, no one took his word seriously. So then, thus, because of that, it got him into a lot of hot water. But this isn't just this one example. This is just a shining microcosm of what this happens. I feel like a lot of people end up getting into this entire scenario or situations where things just get misinterpreted and or they get fucked over or people hate them only because they're lacking the charisma. And I do believe that you can train yourself to have charisma. I don't think you're always a charisma vacuum, but of course it just depends on where you are naturally. There are some wrestlers, to go to wrestling as an example, there are some wrestlers out there that are charisma vacuums. They have nothing. They have no ability to talk whatsoever. But the thing is, usually with those people, they pair them up with a manager so that the manager can do all the talking while they're just sit there or stand there and be a giant, huge body. You know, that's how that's how that works, but that's how they disguise it. But it is a possibility that sometimes people just don't have it. I would like to say you can train it, but it's one of those things you have to learn where to get comfortable from. You have to learn where you're comfortable in and what type of person you can be in order to become charismatic. An example of this would be somebody like George Costanza from the Seinfeld, with the episode where he does the opposite of what he would normally do. And I think that a lot of the time people get into a weird loop where they just do what they think they're supposed to do, and in reality they probably should do the opposite, and that'd probably help people out realistically and think they're more charismatic than they actually are. But as well, there are other minor inconveniences such as RBF, resting bitch face, that will make it so people will never think you're charismatic or never listen to you, as well as the factor of how you look as well. As much as you can look not good looking, and because of that, people will just think you're not charismatic. Unfortunately, that's just the way it is. Some people just have that uphill battle, but I do think it is one of those things that can be maximized if you can figure out what traits you have and strengthen those traits, so then that way the charisma can come out, whatever it is. But if you don't have any, or you're just all the weak points are so weak that they negate anything else, then you have to figure it out from a different angle. But that's a kind of a different story for a different day. But I feel like this is the issue with a lot of stuff now, especially if you want to become like a content creator or do something along those lines. You have to have some sort of charisma, because if you don't, no one's going to care about you. You could be the most genius person in the universe, the smartest or whatever, but if you're not charismatic in some shape, way, or fashion, you're not going to really last in this realm, really. You can be a flash in the pan by doing something. Let's say you're a looks maxer, or let's say just somebody who does very niche, let's say political stuff. If you are too within that realm without being able to break out, or at least show a genuine self or a charismatic self, maybe passionate, being able to be moved about certain things, not necessarily stagnant in one hole or just a one-trick pony, you're you're going to make it, but other people get tied into that rabbit hole, and then thus they're kind of screwed because they can't charismatically act their way out of a bag. You know, it's like they're trapped in whatever they get. Their one known thing is keeping them down. So I would like to think that charisma is something that you can train. I don't necessarily know how you would, but I do believe in the idea of understanding oneself and understanding the possibilities that could occur from trying to maximize that stat, because you can get very far with very little credentials as long as you have the charisma up. There's an amount of people that can do a bunch of shit with little to no effort whatsoever because their charisma is so high that people just kind of believe them. And I think that that is something at least valuable, worth looking into, because it can make your life way easier than you're making it now. And it can make up for other aspects. Let's say you don't look as good as you want to, or you're just fat. Charisma can make things up like that. So it is just something to think about, and a very important thing that I think a lot of people kind of look over, because there are other factors that might be a little bit more immediate. But in reality, this is a thing that can make people personable with others and then can kind of get away with stuff. So with that being said, kind of random one, but still something that happens in along the lines of this channel nonetheless. Please tell me any stories you might or may not have about somebody charismatic that you know, or lack of charisma. Please let me know in the comment section down below. Please like, comment, and subscribe. Please share this video with anybody who may or may not like it. I'll be back on tomorrow with a new video. Thank you very much for watching. I really do appreciate it. I will see you in the next one. Keep it heavy. Stay safe out there. Stay cool now. No, actually stay warm. And I'll see you in the next one. Peace.